We don't this week have an artist as our provocateur and presenter from Northern Ireland. We have somebody from Jordan, who's based in between Germany and Egypt. I met Raphael Khouri a few years ago, and I think instantly fell in love with his words. He's one of the most poetic and beautiful thinkers that I know. And I'm very glad that more and more people are experiencing his work through this project. But he is already very strongly established. He's a theatre maker, playwright, a documentary playwright, living between Cairo and Berlin, as I said, and the author of several plays, including She, He, Me, No Matter Where I Go, and is also part of the climate change theatre action. And their play, Oh, How We Loved Arjuna, was read internationally as part of that initiative. Raphael has also done little bits of work with Outburst and currently has work in development with us that we hope, as soon as circumstances allow, that we'll be able to develop further. Raphael writes about everything from perfume to kinship to tradition and lost tradition and trans experience. And I am just absolutely delighted and honored that he is here tonight on behalf of Outburst. So thank you, Raphael.
Gracias, Ruth. Muchas gracias. Prácticamente como el camino perfecto para presentar a nuestro próximo invitado, que es Raphael Khouri, que es un hombre trans, dramaturgo, escritor, y que quiso empezar su presentación con un video donde se refiere a la juventud y a la infancia y a la ocupación del espacio público por la juventud y por la infancia. Entonces, si me dan un minuto, voy a compartirles este video que nos presenta Raphael.
I live in downtown Cairo, in the only pedestrian zone available. Almost all the shops and cafes inside the pedestrian zone are shut down. A couple of months ago, the zone became wonderfully alive with teenagers and kids coming here to skate or to bike. This was a beautiful thing to see because in Arab countries, we all live without hope and without public space. Young people were coming in from all over Cairo to be joyful. Girls and young women feeling free and enjoying their bodies. Kids gathering, teaching each other how to skate and how to do tricks. Boys and girls engaging in non-toxic ways, making something out of nothing. When the scene became too joyful, security arrived to disperse them. The angry man with the gun and the uniform and walkie-talkie demanded that they all leave now. Security even put up cement barriers and chains to keep the kids out. He said they were causing a headache. The pedestrian zone became dead once again. I was devastated. Those kids brought us life in a daily situation that would make Pinochet jealous. Not long ago, I overheard some young queers here in Cairo whispering about the pedestrian zone I live in. They were telling themselves in disbelief how 10 years ago, just after the revolution, it used to be filled with queer cafes where LGBT people would hang out and be completely flamboyant. Cairo was a different place back then with crazy, legendary parties. I can't imagine that my neighborhood was full of queer cafes either. I was also in disbelief. It's really a different place now. Many of the older generation of LGBT people have stopped coming downtown altogether because the memories hurt so much. All their old hangouts are shut, the cafes and the liveliness are gone. Their friends have left the country or are in prison or are dead or clinically depressed. I think a lot about how one of the first things the Nazis infamously burned when they burned their piles of books in Berlin was the research and the books from the Magnus Hirschfeld Institute. The institute was a groundbreaking center which supported queer and trans people. The founder himself, Magnus Hirschfeld, was queer and worked very hard to try to change homophobic laws in Germany. His institute helped trans people change their gender on their IDs in the 1920s. It was easier to change your gender officially back then than it is now in Germany. Berlin was a crazy place back then. You had over 100 LGBT bars, many of which were exclusively trans bars. You don't even have a single trans bar in Berlin now. Yesterday, as I squeezed past the chain to get into the pedestrian zone and to my house, I realized that some of the kids had slowly started to come back.
Thank you, Raphael, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to speak English now, and I'm really glad to have you here. You're so inspiring, and it's so important to have your voice here because you come from a different part of the world that maybe we don't have a clue, and at the same time we share so much in terms of our concerns. You mentioned the Pinochet dictatorship in Chile, which is something that on this side in the Americas we are very aware of. We've suffered dictatorships in Argentina as well. Maybe the cruelest ones in Latin America were in Argentina and Chile. And also, thank you for bringing the idea of territory in terms of cultural translation, because territory is something that we fight for. Having our territory, having a place where we can, be together and just hang out and share this space and build our community is really important for us. And it's been important always. So thank you very much. And thank you for bringing this youth thing, which is so important that we support and understand in which ways we can support youth, queer youth worldwide. So now we can just have a conversation.
Yeah, when you approached me to join this this gathering, I thought a lot about what translating queer means, and at the beginning of the month I was doing research about different code words that queer people have used to communicate with each other in English and in Arabic, in a secret way, like secret words that they had to deliver messages. And then I was, thinking about actually, what about, like, can queerness, when queerness itself is suppressed, can it be translated in other ways besides language? And And it happens that I live in this neighborhood, and I overheard some, they must have been 20 years old, the young queers saying, can you imagine that we used to have queer cafes here? And there was, I've heard about all these parties that happened here. And of course, this doesn't, I mean, for the young people, they can't believe that their own city used to be like so fabulous and so legendary and so queer. And it's really like complete buried archaeology, and the artifacts of it are nowhere to be found. And even for me, when I heard that, it's so astonishing. I never would have thought of that living here and looking around me. And so I wanted to do something about, that's personal for me as well, because I'm not able to do any of my plays in Arabic in my own language or in any Arab country. I can't do my plays neither in my home country or any other Arab country. And so I wanted to find hope in something, that wasn't necessarily read as queer, but if you look a little bit closer, you can see a little bit of queerness also, even even just in the way some kids carry themselves, or the fact that there is so much freedom in this pedestrian place is like there's something very queer, and that's why it had to get shut down. And then there's little battles of resistance where the kids come back and then the security comes back, and it's like a tit for tat. And so for me, that was very queer, and it means that the spirit of this place is still alive, even though the big things that we wanted to see are not there. There's something in this place that wants to be free. So that was my approach to queerness and translation for this.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because it's in one side it's about the backlash, like how we go back in,
Yes.
we conquer rights and possibilities and then we lose them according to the
Yeah.
current government or the ruling of public space, and we've been experiencing that here in the Americas. Like we conquer rights and then we lose them and then we need to fight for them again. And for a period, it is okay to occupy the public space, and then
Yeah.
it's not. And then,
Yeah.
not that it's forbidden, but it becomes dangerous because
Yeah.
people are there to cause damage and hurt us. So we need
Yeah.
to negotiate that all the time. And
Yes. And
also, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
just to go also back to what Marlene was saying, was like there's so much that I can relate to and that I try to think about in my current work, and the one that I want to do with Outburst is like looking back to the way trans and queer people, the status that we had before. And I'm not talking about 10 years ago or 100 years ago. I'm talking about pre-colonial times, and the progress that we have lost from then till now is astonishing. And I think that we grew up too much with this idea that we have so much progress in modernity, when we're finding out as climate change becomes real for people, and even cisgender people become shocked and disillusioned with the state of the world. It's like we were there as trans and queer people. We knew that something was wrong well before. And so for me, it's like even like I think we need to go even, that's what I try to do at least, is to go even further and further back and look at indigenous practices and see how much shamanic wisdom was there, and that we've lost and that we want to recover, as she was saying.
Yeah, that speaks a lot to our concerns right now around environment, because
Yeah.
the environmental issues that we have to deal now, like climate, it's not even climate change anymore, it's climate
Yes.
emergency. So
Yeah.
it's 100% linked to the indigenous genocide, because
Yeah.
at least in Brazil and in the Amazon forest, the protection of that environment is in the hands of the indigenous communities. And if they are, you know, extermined, you are
Yeah,
you are exterminating the resources and, you know, everything we need to survive, you
yeah,
know, as human. So it's so important that you create this intersection with environment and climate issues, because sometimes that is treated like a separate issue, and it's not. It's just
no,
one
it's not.
issue. And also, I'd like to ask you, like, your plays or your scripts, do you write them originally in what language? Like She, He, Me, which is a play that you wrote and, you know, had a journey of its own.
Yeah.
In which language did you write it? Did you write it in English or in?
Yes, I wrote it in
Yeah.
English. I was writing in Arabic and French. I did interviews for this because it's a documentary play. So I did the interviews in Arabic and in French. And then I wrote it in English. So it kind of happened in three languages. And mostly because I couldn't perform it anywhere in Arabic. So, and I had a kind of an internship at a playwriting uh, center in New York. They invited me to come and develop Shihimi, and so we did it first in English, but then we were able to do, like, I worked on a retranslation back to Arabic with a friend of mine, and so it does exist in Arabic, but it was written in English. Yes.
For, because I had the chance to read the play, you sent it to
Yeah.
me, and
Yeah.
I was very stimulated by it. Like, I thought, wow, this is so interesting to be produced around the world, you know. And my thoughts were, what an amazing exercise was, because the play She, He,
Mm,
Me,
mm,
ella, él, yo, ela, ele, eu, is a play that in some way embraces such different cultural contexts,
mm,
and also embraces the issue of migration and
mm,
diaspora
mm.
and mandatory migration. and
Yeah.
and so I was very moved by how these issues could have different ways of dealing with these problems of, you know, gender identity and oppression and the current and local regimes in
Yeah.
terms of what you can be and you can't be, and how the state control over identity. So how did you work out having these different cultural realities in one place, in one play, actually?
I'm not sure what you mean by different cultural reality. I mean, the three characters are all Arabs, so they have. I mean, just in terms of family, there's a there's very similar family dynamic, and it was actually first like direct staged in German, so that was, it was. I mean, Germans are. It was staged in Austria in German, so they actually. I was surprised that people stayed till the end, and they were paying attention, and they stayed after for the discussion twice, and once we did it in Germany and then we did it in Austria, and it seemed to translate quite well because there's kind of a story there, and I don't know if it's universal, but it people were hanging out. And I think what the hardest test was when there was a group of teenagers brought in from schools to watch it, and I was very worried. I was like, oh boy, this is like, if and then it managed to pass that litmus test, and I was like, it's fine. It was relatable. It's like a trans guy and his mom, a trans woman and her son, a non-binary person trying to figure stuff out, and it seemed to translate in that way across cultural barriers. And what's interesting is that a lot of people had preconceptions like, oh, this is a Muslim family, so of course it's not going to work out. And then actually the mother of the trans guy is like, she accepts it in her own way, and that surprised people. And then you find like a lot of stories in Austria where, you know, people would come to me after and they would say, I actually know a queer man who's been rejected by his family here in Austria. And so it's like, then they come out with their own stories of, you know, things aren't that amazing all the time in a Western country either. So in both ways, you know, they were surprised and I was surprised. And I think it's like, what I've learned is actually that it's like, I don't think Arabs are less progressive or more progressive, or Austrians are more progressive or less. I think that the only difference is our legal system is like, we still have a very old colonial legal system which penalizes things like homosexuality, and that's affected us in a deep way, whereas you have a lot of families who are accepting of their trans or queer kids here more than you might expect. And so it's really only the laws that separate us, I think.
Yeah, and it's great that that you are bringing that, like, the ambiguities
Yeah,
between the Western and Eastern world, because you know, Brazil is the country that has the highest rate of trans people homicides. So
I'm
Brazil is
sorry.
yeah, Brazil is the country that kills more transgender people in the world. It's followed by Mexico,
Mm,
which has like less than the half of the number of, so people are killed. It's a
yeah,
genocide.
yes, it is.
And at some point when this came out and people were, you know, saying this, we can't allow a country like ours to be the, you know, world champion in transgender murders. It's just insane and so horrific. And
Yeah.
someone said it's safest to be trans in Iran than in Brazil.
Oh wow. There's
So
a
yeah,
reason behind that. I mean,
yeah, I
yeah, I
know.
mean, so
But
it's not,
it's about
it's kind of a
challenging.
perverse, it's a
Yeah.
perverse logic that makes that true, you know, the fact like the actually a lot of queer people are encouraged to transition rather than become homosexual, because that would, you know, preserve the binary of society better and the reproductive family structure better. So I'm sure you're right, but the reasons are
Like in not,
yeah,
it's not a comparison like this is
yeah,
better
yeah,
than this. It's all bad, but like
yeah,
it challenges in some way the way that
yeah,
the, you know, our, from our side, we understand other cultures and other territories.
yeah,
So it's really, yeah, there's lots of prejudices to be
yes, yes, yes,
deconstructed, not just gender and identity, but also cultural stuff
yes,
that we need
yes.
to look at.
I think it's I think it's very hard for trans people everywhere, generally speaking, especially trans women. I think it can be extremely, extremely dangerous.
So just for us to wrap up,
Yeah.
so what's next? What's
Oh la
your next?
la.
What are you working on, or what? If you want to leave us with that, with any
Yeah,
final thoughts.
I'm actually working on two new plays. One of them is for Outburst whenever we can manage to do it, and that's a play about pretty much about what you know, Marlena is working on, and what I'm also thinking about, which is looking at the ways that the past was more progressive for trans people, and by that I mean, you know, 2,000 years ago. And I look specifically at the case of theater and the way that theater started through worship of a transgender god, and then was taken over or stolen by uh, cisgender people, capitalism, you know. And so I look at that, and also you know, in the pandemic, especially, and actually a little bit before, I became very interested in plants and healing plants and perfume plants. And so, as you were saying, there's a lot of intersections between you know, between things. And I think we're all generally going back to the past as a future place where, you know, where we had a harmonious relationship to plants and to gender, and we were, you know, living in a more just society, more just societies. And so I'm looking a lot at that, whether it's through plants or through plays. I'm trying to uncover things that have been lost and
Great.
bring them back if I can. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You know, in Amerindian, American Indian indigenous cultures, the present, the past is here with us. So it's an understanding of time that it's not linear, it's circular.
Wow. Wow.
So the past is here with us,
Wow. Wow.
as is
Amazing.
the future as well.
Amazing.
It's, the
Yes.
future is not something that will happen. It's something that is here. And the past is here with us. So our ancestors are here. The knowledge of the past is here. So what we're saying speaks a lot to that kind
Yeah.
of different understanding of time, which we
Yeah.
could call now as queer time. It's a dissident
Yeah.
time,
Yes.
a dissident way of understanding time.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for your participation, your contribution, your beautiful video, your
Thank you for
beautiful
having me.
work as an artist. I'm looking forward to staying connected with you, not only
Likewise.
me, but our network. So stay with us and we will continue with our next guest for tonight. Okay?
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.